The Galactic SOS. The galaxy was silent, but silence in space was never a good thing. A single distress signal echoed through the vastness, a desperate plea from a small, trembling planet in the Galactic Core Alliance. The message was short but chilling. Help us. They are coming. We can't stop them. The transmission spread across every star system, reaching thousands of species, yet no one responded. The Galactic Core Alliance, a group of peaceful civilizations, had no weapons strong enough to face the enemy called the Voidborn. These creatures appeared out of nowhere, destroying entire planets without leaving a trace of life behind. The Council of the Galactic Core, located on the shining station of Irithon Prime, was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species debated furiously. Some demanded action, while others insisted on retreat. None of them had ever faced a threat like the Voidborn. They are unstoppable, one council member said, his voice shaking. We send our fleets, and they vanish. What hope do we have? We must keep trying. Another shouted, we can't just surrender. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Their ships were no match for the Voidborn. Their weapons barely scratched the enemy's sleek, black ships that moved like predators through space. Hope was slipping away. Then, a new voice joined the conversation. It wasn't from any council member. It wasn't even from the Galactic Core. It was an Earthling. The room fell silent as the hologram of a human appeared in the center of the council chamber. The human looked calm, almost too calm for someone who had just heard about the Voidborn. We received your distress signal, the human said. Earth is sending help. The council erupted in disbelief. Earth? The Deathworlders. One alien whispered to another. They're the ones who survive on that dangerous planet with the giant storms and predators. Why would they help us? Another asked, suspicious. The human ignored the murmurs. We've studied the Voidborn. Their tactics, their weapons. We've seen this kind of thing before. Trust us. We'll handle it. The council leader, an elder from the gentle, bird-like Renali species, spoke up. Earthling, we are grateful for your offer, but do you understand what you're facing? The Voidborn have destroyed fleets 10 times stronger than anything we've seen from your people. The human smiled, a small, unsettling smile. That's because you've never seen what humans can do. The hologram flickered off before the council could ask any more questions. The room was left in stunned silence. Hours later, near the edge of the galaxy, a ship appeared out of hyperspace. It wasn't like the sleek, delicate ships of the Galactic Core. This one was massive, gray, and built like a fortress. The hull was covered in thick armor, with visible scars from battles past. Across the side of the ship, bold letters read, HFY Resolute. Inside the ship, the crew of Earth's finest soldiers and strategists prepared for war. Commander Adrian Blake, a seasoned officer, stood on the bridge. He stared at the holographic map of the Voidborn's last known location. Do we have confirmation from the council? He asked. Yes, sir, replied his second-in-command, Lieutenant Vega. They're skeptical, but they won't stop us. Blake smirked. Good. Let's show them what a Deathworlder can do. The ship's engines roared as the Resolute headed toward the Galactic Core. Along the way, they picked up more signals, planets screaming for help, stations begging for mercy. Blake listened to each one, his face growing darker with every cry. Voidborn aren't just attacking, he muttered. They're hunting. Meanwhile, on Irithon Prime, the council watched in disbelief as the Resolute approached their station. It was the largest warship they had ever seen, dwarfing their own fleets. Is this how all humans build their ships? One council member asked nervously. Apparently, they build for survival, another replied. The Resolute docked, and a small group of humans stepped onto the station. They wore dark uniforms, their expressions hard and determined. Commander Blake led the group, his presence commanding the room. Commander Blake, the Rhinali Council leader, greeted him cautiously. Thank you for coming. But do you truly believe you can stop the Voidborn? Blake met the elder's eyes. "We don't believe. We know." Before the council leader could respond, alarms blared across the station. A monitor lit up, showing a void-born fleet entering the system. The sleek, black ships moved like predators, circling their prey. Panic broke out in the council chamber. "They're here," someone shouted. "We're doomed." Blake didn't flinch. He turned to his team. "Activate the shields. Prepare the railguns." The council leader stared at him, shocked. "What are you doing? You can't fight them alone." Blake gave a sharp grin. "Watch us." The humans moved with precision, their weapons activating faster than the council had ever seen. The station trembled as the Resolute opened fire, its railguns tearing through the Voidborn ships with brutal efficiency. For the first time, the Voidborn didn't dominate. They retreated. As the last Voidborn ship vanished into the darkness, the council chamber fell silent. The humans stood tall, their confidence unshaken. Blake turned to the council. "This is just the beginning. If you want to survive, follow our lead." The elder nodded slowly, realization dawning in his eyes. The galaxy had cried for help, and the Deathworlders had answered. Deathworlders unleashed. The Voidborn retreat was a temporary reprieve. For the Galactic Core Alliance, it was a miracle. For the humans, it was simply the opening move. Commander Blake wasted no time. Back aboard the HFY Resolute, he called his officers into the war room. A holographic map displayed the positions of Voidborn incursions, scattered across systems like bloodstains. "These creatures are relentless," Blake began, his tone sharp, "and we can't wait for them to strike again. We need to hit them first. Hard." His team nodded, but the Rhinali scientist, Dr. Illyra, who had joined them as the council's liaison, looked uneasy. "Commander, I don't doubt your resolve," she said, her feathered head tilting slightly. "But the Voidborn are unlike any enemy we faced. They adapt. Every attack only makes them stronger." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Good. Then they'll have something new to fear." Illyra blinked, her feathers bristling. She couldn't tell if the human was fearless or reckless, or both. The Council's dilemma. Back on Irithon Prime, the Council was still reeling from the humans' arrival. News of the Resolute's victory spread quickly, creating mixed reactions among the species. "They're too aggressive," argued Councillor Theron, a reptilian diplomat. "Their methods are dangerous. What happens if they provoke the Voidborn even further?" "But they succeeded," countered Councillor Nihilus, a crystalline being whose body shimmered with light. "They've done what we couldn't. If we reject their help, we're condemning ourselves." The Rhinali elder listened quietly, his talons tapping against the floor. Finally, he spoke. "Humans are not like us. Their history is one of survival, of overcoming impossible odds. Perhaps their aggression is exactly what we need." His words hung in the air, unspoken fears mingling with fragile hope. The Deathworlder strategy. The next day, the humans presented their strategy to the council. Blake stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by his officers and a towering holographic display of the Voidborn fleet. "Our goal is simple. We're going to cut off the Voidborn at their source," Blake declared. "We've identified a pattern in their attacks. They're not random. They're expanding outward from a central location." He pointed to a glowing red dot on the map. "Here, this is where they're coming from." The council gasped. The location was deep in uncharted space, a void where no ships had ever returned. "That region is cursed," Theron hissed. "No one who ventures there survives." Blake smirked. "That's because you've never sent Deathworlders." The council murmured nervously. "And what do you plan to do when you find their source?" Illyra asked cautiously. "Destroy it," Blake replied flatly. "But we'll need your fleets to cover us." The room erupted into chaos. Some council members were willing to fight, while others refused to risk their people. Blake let them argue, his expression unreadable. Finally, the Rhinali elder raised a wing, silencing the room. "We will provide support," he said. "But Commander Blake, if you fail, it could mean the end of all of us." Blake nodded. Understood. Failure isn't an option. Unconventional tactics. While the council debated, the humans prepared. Their engineers worked tirelessly, modifying their ships with alien technology. They created hybrid weapons, fusing human ingenuity with the energy-based systems of the Rinaldi and the crystalline structures of Nihilus's people. But their most surprising weapon was their psychology. Humans had a reputation among the stars: relentless, unpredictable, and, above all, survivors. They used this to their advantage. During training exercises with the Allied fleets, the humans demonstrated tactics that left the aliens stunned. Simulated void-borne ships were met with overwhelming aggression, rapid flanking maneuvers, kamikaze drones, and holographic decoys that confused the enemy. Humans don't just fight, Illyra observed, watching from the command deck. They think like predators. Lieutenant Vega, standing nearby, smirked. On Earth, we learned one thing. If you want to survive, you can't just react. You have to strike first. The first offensive. The combined fleet launched its first offensive against a void-borne outpost. The Council provided dozens of ships, but the humans led the charge. Their war cries echoed across the comm channels, unsettling their allies, but demoralizing the enemy. As the Resolute's railguns fired, ripping through the void-borne ships, Illyra watched in awe and horror. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose, their coordination flawless, and their resolve unshakable. But the void-borne weren't defenseless. They adapted quickly, shifting their tactics to counter the human assault. By the end of the battle, the fleet had won, but at a cost. Several Council ships were destroyed, and the void-borne had left a chilling message carved into the debris of one of their own ships. We evolve. You will not. A new threat. Back aboard the Resolute, Blake studied the message with grim determination. They're testing us, he said, pushing us to see how far we'll go. Illyra stepped forward. Commander, if they're evolving, it's only a matter of time before they find a way to defeat us. We need to understand them, what they are, where they come from. Blake nodded slowly. Agreed. Which means we're going straight into the void. Illyra's feathers fluffed nervously. You mean the cursed region? Blake's smile returned, cold and confident. Exactly. If the void-borne have a home, that's where we'll find it. And when we do, we'll burn it to the ground. The cost of victory. The glow of the void-borne's ominous message lingered in everyone's mind. We evolve. You will not. The Galactic Alliance had seen their first real taste of victory, but the triumph was bittersweet. Humans may have led the charge, but the cost was steep. The aftermath. Back on the Resolute, the crew tended to the wounded. The infirmary was filled with groans, blood, and quiet whispers. Alien and human medics worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of shared survival. Commander Adrian Blake stood over the holographic map in the war room, his jaw tight. Lieutenant Vega entered, carrying a report. Casualties are higher than we expected, Vega said, her voice low. 15 ships lost, including 9 from the Council's fleet. Morale is shaky. Blake's face darkened. And the void-borne. They've retreated to the cursed sector, but their patterns are changing. They're preparing for something. Blake slammed his fist on the console. They're not retreating. They're learning. Cracks in the Alliance. The Galactic Council's chamber on Irithon Prime buzzed with tension. Alien representatives argued fiercely, their holograms flickering as their emotions flared. They're reckless, shouted Theron, the reptilian counselor. The humans treat this like a game, but we're the ones paying the price. They've achieved more in weeks than we have in years, countered Nihilus, their crystalline body pulsing with light. Without them, we're finished. The elder Rinaldi leader raised a wing to quiet the room. Enough. We must remain united. But I agree, Earth's methods are unorthodox. Commander Blake owes us answers. As the debate continued, hidden doubts surfaced. Some council members whispered fears that humanity's boldness might bring more harm than good. Others secretly admired the humans' courage, wondering if they were witnessing the rise of a new dominant force in the galaxy, a discovery in the void. Meanwhile, the Resolute prepared for its most dangerous mission yet, entering the cursed sector to find the Voidborn's origins. Commander Blake addressed his crew on the hangar deck, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Listen up," he began. "We're heading into unknown territory. No one's made it back from the void alive. That's why we're the ones going. If anyone can survive, it's us." The crew responded with a resounding cheer, but not everyone shared their confidence. Dr. Illyra, the Rhinali scientist, approached Blake as the crew dispersed. "Commander, are you certain about this?" she asked, her feathers ruffling with unease. "This isn't just another battle. We're heading into the heart of the enemy." Blake nodded. "Exactly. If we want to stop them, we need to understand them. And we can't do that from the sidelines." Illyra hesitated. "Just promise me you'll be careful. The Voidborn don't just destroy. They corrupt." Blake gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Doc. We're not easy to break." Into the darkness, the Resolute plunged into the cursed sector, its massive engines slicing through the eerie void. The stars seemed to dim, and the space around them felt wrong. Instruments flickered, and strange whispers echoed through the ship's comms, sending chills down the crew's spines. "What's causing this interference?" Vega asked, her hands flying over the controls. "It's not interference," Illyra replied, her voice trembling. "It's the Voidborn. Their presence disrupts reality itself." The ship's sensors picked up a massive object ahead, a derelict structure floating in the void. It was ancient, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with a sickly green light. Blake stared at the holographic image. "That's it. That's where they came from. The origin of the Voidborn." A small team, including Blake, Vega, and Illyra, boarded the derelict ship. Inside, they found corridors filled with strange, organic growths that seemed alive, twitching, and pulsing with every step. The air was heavy, almost suffocating. "This place feels wrong," Vega muttered, her weapon raised. Illyra scanned the walls, her feathers trembling. "These markings, they're not just decorations. They're instructions." "Instructions for what?" Blake asked. "To build the Voidborn," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They entered a large chamber where a holographic archive flickered to life. It showed an ancient race, tall, shadowy beings with glowing eyes, creating the Voidborn as weapons of mass destruction. But their creation turned on them, wiping them out and spreading chaos across the galaxy. They weren't meant to stop, Illyra realized. They were designed to evolve, to destroy everything. Blake clenched his fists. "Then we'll finish what their creators couldn't." The Voidborn's warning. Before the team could leave, the ship came alive. Walls shifted, and a chilling voice filled the air. "You dare enter our domain. You think you understand us. You are but prey." Voidborn drones emerged from the shadows, their sleek black bodies gleaming with deadly precision. The team fought their way out, barely escaping back to the Resolute with the ancient data. As the ship prepared to leave, the Voidborn fleet appeared, surrounding them. Blake ordered the crew to activate a risky maneuver, a hyperspace jump within the cursed sector. The ship shuddered as it tore through the void, escaping by the narrowest margin. The cost of knowledge. Back in friendly space, the crew analyzed the data. The Voidborn weren't just weapons. They were the legacy of a species that had wanted to cleanse the galaxy of what they considered inferior life. The Voidborn had evolved beyond their creator's control, becoming a force of pure destruction. Blake called a meeting with his officers and Illyra. "This changes everything," he said. "We know their origin, but we also know their weakness. They were designed. That means they can be unmade." Illyra frowned. "But at what cost? If they're evolving, they'll adapt to any weapon we use. We might only make them stronger." Blake's expression hardened. Then we hit them before they have a chance. The battle for unity. The discovery of the Voidborn's origins shook the galactic core to its foundation. As the data from the derelict ship spread, fear rippled across the council chambers. The Voidborn were no longer just a threat. They were the galaxy's reckoning. But humanity saw them differently. To Commander Blake and his crew, the Voidborn weren't invincible gods. They were broken machines waiting to be destroyed. Division among allies. The council reconvened, its chamber tense and brimming with unease. The holographic data from the derelict ship hovered above them, displaying the horrific creation of the Voidborn. The ancient race's warning still echoed in the air. Purge all inferior life. Counselor Theron, the reptilian diplomat, hissed sharply. This is madness. These creatures were designed to end us. What hope do we have against perfection? Counselor Nihilus, glowing with nervous energy, countered. Perfection. They've been running unchecked for centuries. Now we know their weakness. Commander Blake and his people have given us a chance. Theron sneered. A chance. They're playing with fire. Humanity's recklessness will burn us all. The debate raged on. Some factions supported Earth's bold strategies, while others feared them. The alliance that had held the Council together for centuries was fracturing under the weight of the Voidborn threat. Humanity's ultimatum. The Council's disunity frustrated Blake. He watched the arguments unfold from the sidelines, his fists clenched. Finally, he stood and spoke, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. You're all scared. I get it. You've lived your lives in peace, thinking war was someone else's problem. But the Voidborn don't care about your politics. They're coming, and the only thing standing between you and extinction is us. He stepped closer to the Council's central platform, his presence commanding the room. You don't trust us. Fine. But trust results. We've fought them. We've won. And we'll keep winning, whether you join us or not. The council chamber fell silent. Blake's words carried a weight the council couldn't ignore. Slowly, the elder Renali leader rose. His feathers fluttered as he spoke. Commander Blake, we will support you, he said, but unity is fragile. If we fail to act as one, we are already lost. Blake nodded, his eyes cold and determined. Then let's make sure we don't fail. Preparing for total war. On board the Resolute, preparations for the next offensive began. Engineers worked around the clock, outfitting the fleet with hybrid weapons based on the Voidborn data. Railguns were upgraded with energy pulses designed to destabilize Voidborn drones, while new shielding technology promised to withstand their reality-bending attacks. But it wasn't just technology that gave humanity an edge. It was their unpredictability. We don't fight like them, Blake said during a strategy briefing. They adapt to patterns, but we don't have patterns. Every move we make has to be one they've never seen before. Dr. Illyra, reviewing the data, interjected, and we'll need every advantage. Their adaptations are accelerating. If they learn to counter our hybrid weapons, they won't get the chance. Blake cut in. We hit them before they adapt. Hard and fast. Illyra hesitated but nodded. She had grown to respect humanity's tenacity, even if it scared her. Sabotage from within. As the fleet prepared to leave, tensions boiled over. Some council factions, still distrustful of humanity, began sabotaging the effort. Supplies went missing, critical repairs were delayed, and dissent spread through the Allied crews. Blake confronted the council leaders in a secure meeting. I know what's happening, he said bluntly. If you think you can undermine us and still survive this war, you're delusional. Theron, his forked tongue flickering, smirked. We're just ensuring humanity doesn't overstep. Blake leaned in, his voice a low growl. Overstep. We're the only reason you're still breathing. Keep this up, and the Voidborn won't need to destroy you. You'll do it yourselves. The elder Renali intervened, his voice calm but firm. Enough. Commander Blake is right. Our survival depends on trust. Let us resolve these disputes before they become irreparable." The room grew quiet, the weight of the elder's words sinking in. But Blake knew trust wouldn't come easily. The first unified strike. Despite the sabotage, the fleet launched its next mission. A direct strike against a void-born stronghold near the cursed sector. The combined fleet of human and alien ships moved as one, a fragile unity born of desperation. The battle began with chaos. The void-born unleashed new drones, faster and more aggressive than before. Allied ships struggled to keep up, but humanity's leadership turned the tide. Blake's unconventional strategies, deploying decoy ships and using gravity mines to trap the void-born, kept the enemy off balance. Elira watched from the Resolute's bridge, her heart pounding. "They're learning faster," she warned. "We won't survive another battle like this." Blake gritted his teeth. "We won't have to." The fleet's flagship, equipped with humanity's latest weapon, a massive energy disruptor, fired its payload. The void-born ships disintegrated, their adaptive systems unable to counter the weapon in time. The Allied fleet cheered, but the victory was short-lived. A final message appeared on the void-born's remaining ship before it self-destructed. "You delay the inevitable." The cost of unity. As the fleet returned to friendly space, the cracks in the alliance began to show again. Council factions still distrusted humanity, and whispers of rebellion spread among the Allied crews. Even Elira began to question humanity's methods. "Commander," she said quietly during a meeting, "if we keep fighting like this, we'll win battles but lose the war. We need something more." Blake nodded, his gaze distant. "We will. But first, we need to make sure there's still a galaxy left to save." The stage was set for the next phase of the war. The Voidborn were evolving faster, and the Alliance's unity was hanging by a thread. Humanity's boldness had bought them time, but time was running out. Secrets of the Voidborn. The fleet's latest victory against the Voidborn brought no sense of triumph, only dread. Humanity's latest weapon had proven effective, but the Voidborn's chilling final message haunted every corner of the galaxy. "You delay the inevitable." Commander Blake and his crew knew they had bought time, but it was running out. The only hope now was to uncover the secrets of the Voidborn before they evolved beyond anyone's ability to stop them. The plan to enter the heart of darkness. On board the HSS Resolute, the war room was silent as Dr. Elira displayed holographic schematics of the derelict ship they had discovered. Her feathers trembled slightly as she pointed to a glowing cluster deep within the Voidborn's cursed sector. "This," she said, "is what the data refers to as the Void Core. It's not just their origin, it's their command hub. If we destroy this, we sever their network." Lieutenant Vega frowned. "And how exactly do we destroy something we don't even understand?" Elira hesitated. "We don't have to understand it completely. What we know is enough. The Voidborn communicate through a hive mind structure. Disrupt the core, and their collective intelligence collapses." Blake folded his arms. "And what's the catch?" "The catch," Elira said grimly, "is that the Void Core is surrounded by the highest concentration of Voidborn we've ever seen. Entering the sector will be suicidal." A heavy silence followed. Then Blake spoke, his voice steady. "We're going in. If the Void Core is their brain, we'll be the scalpel." Betrayal in the ranks. As the fleet prepared for the mission, tensions among the Council factions reached a boiling point. Theron, the reptilian counselor, secretly gathered his loyalists, sowing dissent among the Allied crews. "They're leading us to slaughter," Theron hissed in a clandestine meeting. "Humanity's arrogance will doom us all. We must protect ourselves." Word of Theron's plotting reached Blake, who summoned him to a private meeting aboard the Resolute. The room was dimly lit, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound. "Do you know why I brought you here?" Blake asked, his tone cold. Theron sneered. "To intimidate me. Your brutish methods don't scare me, human." Blake leaned closer, his eyes like steel. "Good. Fear isn't what I'm after. Understanding is. If you sabotage this mission, you're not just dooming yourself, you're dooming the entire galaxy." Theron's forked tongue flicked nervously. "And if your plan fails, human, what then?" Blake's reply was a quiet growl. "If we fail, there won't be a galaxy left to worry about." The journey into the Void Core. The Allied fleet set out, venturing deeper into the cursed sector than any had dared before. The darkness was suffocating, the stars fading until only the faint glow of the ship's engines pierced the void. Sensors flickered, and the strange whispers from before returned, louder this time. "What's causing this?" Vega asked, scanning her console. Elira studied the readings, her feathers twitching. "It's the Voidborn. They're not just machines. They manipulate space itself. Reality bends around them." As the fleet neared the Void Core, the whispers grew into an oppressive hum. Crew members reported vivid nightmares and hallucinations. One alien officer screamed about shadows crawling inside his mind before collapsing. Blake called an emergency briefing. "Listen up," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever happens, remember this. The Voidborn thrive on fear. If you let it control you, you're already dead. Focus on the mission. Focus on survival." The Void Core revealed. Finally, the fleet reached the Void Core. It was an enormous, pulsating sphere of black and green light, surrounded by a swirling cloud of Voidborn ships. Tendrils of energy extended from the sphere, connecting to smaller ships like a grotesque neural network. "It's alive," Elira whispered, horrified. "The Void Core isn't just a machine. It's a biomechanical organism." The fleet immediately came under attack. Voidborn drones swarmed them, their sleek forms darting between the Allied ships. Humanity's hybrid weapons fired back, but the Voidborn adapted faster than ever, neutralizing tactics that had worked before. Blake's voice rang out across the comms. "Activate the decoys. Draw them away from the core." Dozens of holographic ships deployed, confusing the Voidborn momentarily. The fleet pressed forward, their weapons targeting the Void Core. The core's counterattack. As the Allied fleet closed in, the Void Core unleashed a terrifying countermeasure. Pulses of energy rippled outward, disabling the fleet's systems. Ships flickered, their engines sputtering. "We're dead in the water," Vega shouted. Blake's jaw tightened. "Not yet. Prepare the EMP disruptor." Elira's eyes widened. "The EMP will disable us too." "It's a risk we have to take," Blake replied. "If we don't stop this now, no one will." The EMP fired, a massive wave of energy that shattered the Void Core's tendrils and disrupted the swarm of drones. The fleet's systems rebooted, but the core began regenerating almost instantly. "It's healing itself," Elira exclaimed. Blake turned to her. "Then we make sure it can't. Get that data uploaded to the main cannon, now." A new revelation. As Elira worked frantically to modify the fleet's main weapon, she uncovered a horrifying truth in the Void Core's energy patterns. "This isn't just a hive mind," she said, her voice shaking. "It's a seed. If we destroy it, the energy released will spread Voidborn spores across the galaxy." Blake stared at her. "Are you saying we can't destroy it?" "No," she said. "We have to contain it. There's only one way to stop it permanently. We need to trap it inside a collapsing star." Blake's mind raced. The closest collapsing star was light years away. They didn't have the time or resources to make such a leap, but there was no other choice. "We'll figure it out," Blake said. "We always do." The final stand. The Allied fleet was battered, the Void Core pulsing with renewed life as it prepared to unleash its spores across the galaxy. Humanity's unrelenting determination faced its ultimate test. Commander Blake knew the stakes. One wrong move, and the galaxy would drown in Voidborn terror. The impossible plan. Back aboard the HSS Resolute, the mood was grim. The fleet had barely survived the last assault, and the realization that destroying the Void Core could spread its corruption left the crew reeling. Blake stood before his officers and the council representatives in the war room, his voice steady despite the tension. "Our only option," he began, pointing to a holographic star map, "is to drag the void core into this collapsing star. Its gravity well is strong enough to contain the energy release." Elira's feathers flared in alarm. "Commander, the void core isn't just stationary. It's anchored. Its energy field is keeping it rooted in the cursed sector. How do you plan to move it?" Blake smirked faintly. "We're going to use their own technology against them." The room erupted in confusion, but Blake raised a hand to quiet them. "The data we recovered from the derelict ship shows that the Voidborn use energy conduits to move massive objects. We'll reroute one of their conduits and tether the core to it. Then we'll drag it into the star." The council members exchanged worried glances, but Theron sneered. "And what happens when your plan fails? This isn't bravery, human. It's madness." Blake's eyes narrowed. "If you have a better idea, counselor, now's the time. Otherwise, stay out of my way." Sabotage uncovered. As the fleet prepared to execute Blake's plan, sabotage struck again. One of the critical energy transfer ships was destroyed in an explosion. All evidence pointed to internal betrayal. "Theron," Blake growled, his voice filled with anger. "I warned you." The reptilian counselor hissed. "You think I did this. I may not trust you, but I'm not suicidal." Elira stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "The Voidborn can manipulate more than space. They're influencing minds. Whoever sabotaged us may not even realize they were compromised." Blake's face hardened. "Then we purge the fleet of anyone showing signs of influence, and we keep moving." The last push. The fleet advanced toward the Void Core, deploying modified energy conduits salvaged from the Voidborn wreckage. The process was excruciatingly slow. Each step forward met with fierce resistance from the Voidborn swarm. Inside the Void Core, strange new drones emerged, larger, faster, and more lethal. The drones adapted to each attack, neutralizing the hybrid weapons that had once given humanity the edge. On the Resolute's bridge, Vega shouted over the chaos, "Shields at 20%. We can't take another hit." "Hold the line," Blake barked. "We're almost there." The fleet's remaining ships surrounded the Resolute, sacrificing themselves to buy time. Explosions lit up the darkness as one ally after another fell. Rerouting the conduit. On board the lead energy ship, Elira worked tirelessly to reroute the Voidborn conduit. Sweat dripped from her feathers as she manipulated the alien controls, her talons trembling. "We're running out of time, Elira." Blake's voice crackled over the comms. "I know," she snapped, her focus unbroken. "These systems weren't meant to do this. One wrong move, and the conduit will collapse." The Voidborn detected the manipulation and launched an all-out assault on the energy ship. Blake led a team of Marines in a desperate defense, their weapons blazing as the drones closed in. Elira's voice suddenly cut through the chaos. "It's done. The conduit is tethered. Dragging the core." The fleet's engines roared to life, straining against the immense pull of the Void Core. The energy conduit lit up, its glowing tendrils connecting the core to the collapsing star's gravity well. Slowly, agonizingly, the core began to move. But the Voidborn weren't finished. The core released a pulse of energy that disabled half the fleet, leaving them adrift. The remaining ships pressed on, their engines screaming under the strain. "Commander, the core is resisting," Vega shouted. Blake gritted his teeth. "Push harder. All power to the engines." As the core neared the collapsing star, the Voidborn launched one final wave of drones, larger and more dangerous than anything the fleet had faced. Blake's team fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. The sacrifice. With the Voidborn swarm overwhelming the fleet, Blake made a fateful decision. He ordered the Resolute to overload its core, creating a massive energy burst that would disable the drones long enough to complete the mission. "Commander, that'll destroy the ship," Vega protested. Blake's voice was calm. "I know, but it'll save the galaxy." The crew hesitated, But Blake's resolve inspired them. "It's been an honor," he said, his gaze sweeping over his team. The Resolute's engines powered up for the overload, the ship trembling as it reached critical mass. Just as the void-born swarm closed in, the ship released a blinding burst of energy, obliterating the drones and severing the void core's resistance. The core's collapse. The void core, now fully within the collapsing star's gravity well, began to disintegrate. Tendrils of energy flailed wildly, but it was too late. The star's immense pull consumed the core, dragging it into oblivion. The surviving ships of the Allied fleet watched from a safe distance as the cursed sector lit up in a brilliant explosion. The Voidborn's network collapsed, their ships across the galaxy going dark. The battle was over, but the cost was unimaginable. When Deathworlders rise, the Void Core was gone, consumed by the collapsing star. Across the galaxy, Voidborn drones went dark, their relentless assault finally halted. The Allied fleet drifted in the aftermath of the final battle, battered and broken but victorious. Yet, for Commander Blake and the crew of the HFY Resolute, there was no celebration. Their sacrifice was the spark that ended the Voidborn menace, and their loss left a hole in the hearts of all who survived. The silent return. The remnants of the Allied fleet limped back to Irithon Prime, their ships scared and their crews weary. The once proud Galactic Council, now humbled, waited anxiously for their return. As the surviving ships docked, a hush fell over the station. Alien representatives gathered to greet their heroes, but no one spoke. The weight of the victory, paid for with so many lives, hung heavy in the air. Elira, one of the few remaining members of the Resolute's crew, stepped forward. Her feathers were dull, her eyes tired, but her voice was steady. "It's done," she said simply. "The Voidborn are no more." The council erupted in mixed emotions, relief, sorrow, and awe. They had doubted humanity's resolve, but now they saw the price Deathworlders were willing to pay to protect the galaxy. Humanity's legacy. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council worked to rebuild the Alliance. Monuments were erected in honor of those who had fallen, with the Resolute's name etched into the stone as a symbol of sacrifice and resilience. But humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. Once seen as an unpredictable and dangerous species, they were now hailed as saviors. The elder Renali leader addressed the council, his voice filled with emotion. "Humanity has shown us the true meaning of courage. They fought not for themselves, but for all of us. We owe them more than we can ever repay." Even Theron, the reptilian counselor who had opposed humanity at every turn, bowed his head in respect. "They are not like us," he admitted. "They are something greater. A new threat." Despite the Voidborn's defeat, Elira couldn't shake a lingering unease. As she reviewed the data from the final battle, she noticed something strange. A faint energy signature near the collapsing star. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. She brought her findings to the council, but many dismissed her concerns. "The Void Core is gone," Theron said dismissively. "The threat is over." "But what if it's not?" Elira pressed. "The Voidborn were evolving. Who's to say they didn't leave something behind? A failsafe, a fragment of their intelligence." The elder Renali leader looked thoughtful. "If Elira is right, we must remain vigilant. The price of peace is eternal watchfulness." Rebuilding the Alliance. In the weeks that followed, humanity worked closely with the Galactic Council to rebuild what had been lost. New alliances were forged and old grudges were set aside. The lessons learned from the war against the Voidborn reshaped the galaxy. Human engineers shared their hybrid technologies, helping other species develop stronger defenses. Alien scientists worked with humans to study the remnants of Voidborn technology, hoping to understand and prevent similar threats in the future. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt united, not out of fear, but out of shared respect and trust. The final goodbye. Elira returned to Earth to deliver a personal message to the families of the Resolute's crew. She stood before a crowd of humans, her feathers gleaming in the sunlight as she spoke. Your loved ones gave everything to save a galaxy that was not their own. Their courage, their sacrifice, will never be forgotten. They have earned a place among the stars, not just as heroes of Earth, but as heroes of all life. The crowd remained silent, their grief heavy, but their pride evident. Humanity had risen to the challenge, proving that even Deathworlders could act with compassion and selflessness. The rise of Deathworlders. As Illyra prepared to leave Earth, she was approached by a young human cadet. He stood tall, his uniform crisp, and his eyes filled with determination. "Dr. Illyra," he said, "do you think the galaxy will ever need Deathworlders again?" She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and hope. "If it does, I have no doubt that humanity will answer the call." The cadet nodded, his resolve unshaken. "Then we'll be ready." Illyra smiled faintly as she boarded her ship. The galaxy had cried for help, and Deathworlders had answered. They had shown the universe what it meant to rise above fear, to face the impossible, and to triumph. And if the darkness ever returned, she knew humanity would stand ready to face it again.